This is about copper mining. There are many jobs that are renowned for their difficulty and danger. Fishermen, farmers and ranchers, steel workers, both the ones who make the steel in factories and blast furnaces and the ones who walk the steel high up in the construction of skyscrapers. No question, these are jobs that require skill, strength, courage, and the capacity to endure. But when I think of the hardest, roughest, most dangerous work, it has to be underground, tightly confined, a miner. I know a little bit about mining coal in Pennsylvania and West Virginia. It wasn't pretty. You load 16 tons and what do you get? Another day older and you're deeper in debt. And don't forget black lung and mine collapse. It's the old story. The big corporations and their shareholders got insanely rich and the miners worked themselves to death. When they protested or went out on strike, the Pinkertons moved in and beat them, and eventually the company compromised an insignificant concession and the work began again because industry needed coal. Industry needed copper too, and on a recent vacation I was in the area where much of the copper was mined, starting in the 1840s and lasting about 100 years. In the case of a few big mines, a little longer than that. America needed copper for telegraph wires and all sorts of vital commercial applications, and America needed copper and brass when it went to war for munitions, bullets, cannons, and shells. The miners in the area dug out the copper. We visited an old mine, toured the machinery above the ground, huge and impressive and driven by steam, coal that is. One machine, run by one engineer and 4 oilers, could extract 10 tons of copper ore in a car moving underground at 36 miles an hour. The mine pierced the earth at an angle of 54 degrees. By the time it played out, the mine shaft was over 1.5 miles long and over 1 mile beneath the surface. At first, the miners climbed down on ladders. Then there was a complicated, pulley-driven system of platforms. You stepped off one and got on another, going down, coming back up. Finally, there was a skid, they called it a man truck, that took the men down. Initially, they worked in teams of 2. One man held a pointed steel rod into the rock, and the other smashed it with a 12-pound hammer. They did this in 10-hour shifts by the light of 1 or 2 candles. If the candle blew out, they had to strike flint to steel in the dark to relight it. These men were skillful and well paid, $35 a week. Less well paid were the brutes who pushed the cradles laden with over a ton of ore out of the mines, dumped it, and came back for more, all day. Eventually they were eliminated, and that great steam-driven machine from Milwaukee, it took them a year to assemble it, could extract 2,000 tons of ore a day, 10 tons at a time, 36 miles an hour. A drill hammer weighing nearly 300 pounds was run by 2 men, one driving it, the other cooling it with water. It could punch holes faster and deeper into the rock, volcanic basalt. The noise it made was hellacious. Then came the one-man drill, 150 pounds, followed by dynamite. Production went up, the labor force was cut in half once again, and the casualty rate was at 33%, what you could expect in war. The miners struck in 1913 and, as usual, were given meager satisfaction to return to work. When a miner died on the job, his wife was given a small payout, along with an eviction notice. On Christmas Day, 1913, in a nearby town, home of the biggest mining concern in the state, where the miners were also out on strike, there was a celebration for children in the Italian hall. Immigrants from many countries worked in the mines. In the midst of festivities, someone shouted, "Fire!" in 2 languages. The people surged for a stairway to exit the building, but the stairwell was blocked. 73 people, many children, were crushed to death. They buried them in trenches. There was no fire. Today they refer to it as the Phantom Fire. That town, Calumet, has not recovered from this disaster. That's what they call it, the disaster. Who shouted fire is not known. How the stairwell was blocked is not known. These mysteries plague that town. No direct connection to the strike was ever established. The miners went back to work and continued to produce copper and die at a terrible rate for another 30 years.